Welcome to Accounting Life with Jotham Tai. Today's episode is 6 ways to know if you're ready for AI. Our guest today is Jason Pikoos, Managing Partner of Client Experience at Connor Group. On this episode, we discuss what indicators to consider when determining if you're ready for AI, advice for CFOs trying to get started, and predictions for the future role of AI within accounting. Now, our host, Jotham Tai.
Hey, Jason. Welcome to the Accounting Life podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the invite. I'm excited to chat about the topic that's, I guess, near and dear to my heart.
It's near and dear to mine as well, Jason. So we're so glad that you're here. And I know there's a lot of interest in the subject. I know beyond just the fascination with artificial intelligence, large language models, generative AI, we accountants think of things in a very practical sense, right? Mm-hmm. So, for those that are thinking about adopting AI, would love to really give our audience a chance to get your perspectives, around how they can get going with this new trend that everyone's hearing about.
Yeah, no, it's, I think from my many years of working with finance and accounting professionals, being an accountant myself, I found that accountants, especially when it comes to technology, are very practical. In other words, they want something that solves an explicit problem. Or gives them a specific area of efficiency or productivity. I think as a result, we've seen a lot of interest in the subject matter, but the adoption has been relatively slow because a lot of AI is just this concept, this idea, this many things that it can do. And then I think when people are, busy people like accountants and they are getting busier by the day, they look at this, say that's really cool. And I'd go to ChatGPT and plan a trip to Spain or ask it a funny question, but how does it help me? So what we are recommending for people to do is, you do need to, the nature of this technology, it does require a bit of an investment of time. I think some of the things that we just encourage people to do is just start taking that first step. There's been some really interesting articles about should we wait, should we see? We're encouraging people to not wait and see. We're not suggesting you jump feet first and, buy every piece of AI out there, but we are recommending that you take some baby steps, start exploring the technology, learn what it is, understand how specifically generative AI works, but even machine learning is a powerful technology that's been around for a long time that accountants are just not using, nor are finance professionals for that matter, which is quite interesting to me. So one of the things that we do is just do a bit of homework, right? You can do research. You can speak to the likes of us at Connor Group. You can watch product demos. There's an amazing amount of material out there that can just start feeding the engine, I guess, so that you can start learning. And to me, I think that is really one of the most important things to start with is just invest a bit of time learning about the technologies out there and the technology in and of itself.
I heard a few things that I think are very important, especially as I have conversations with controllers in our community, just taking baby steps. There are forms of AI that have been around for a while. You don't have to jump in and learn the whole gamut of AI tools that are out there, Gen AI tools and so on. So baby steps, I heard you mention that earlier, I think is a really good first step. With anything new, baby steps are always a great way to start. And then secondly, you mentioned homework. There are a lot of great resources out there to help teams get started. But I do want to take a step back, Jason, for a second. And, if you're not sure, and I know some of my colleagues who are on the CEO side, they're not sure if their organization's ready for AI. Mm-hmm. So what are, in your opinion, some indicators, and maybe specific to finance, what are some indicators in an organization that a team is ready to start doing this homework and start taking these baby steps?
Yeah, I think we have seen a lot of people, and it's interesting. Some people, controllers have come to me and they told us, hey, my CFO walked over and asked me, what are we doing around AI? And it's an interesting question, but to be honest, I think it's the wrong question. And that, I think, is where things need to start. If to be ready for AI, you actually need to start from the beginning, which is, what is your strategy? What's your plan? What's your objectives? You as a finance organization, the CFO, VP of finance, or even the CEO in an organization, what is it that you're trying to achieve? What are your business objectives? That is ultimately what we want to answer, not what are we doing with AI. Now, AI may be a main contributor to achieving those goals, right? Maybe it's efficiency or productivity or scale or growth or cost savings or whatever it might be. And AI can be a great contributor to that, but you always want to start with the objectives. And I think when people plow right into I'm going to buy this AI, the risk is that you spend all this time, invest all this efforts, and you ultimately really don't get meaningful outputs or meaningful value. And what that does is then probably people's attitude towards AI significantly diminishes. So really start with your goals and then marry the technology to the goal that you're looking to achieve. I think that's the other thing. It's like, I got my goals, let's do AI. No, your goals, it may tell you that, you know what, the best thing to do is to optimize your existing tech stack because you're woefully underutilizing it, and therefore that is the best methodology. We had a CEO of an AI company join us at a seminar, it was now a couple of months ago, and it was really interesting to hear from him that same attitude. Hey, automation is a tool, and AI is one of those many automation tools. Start with your goals, figure out what tools are best to solve those or achieve those goals. And sometimes AI isn't the right answer. Maybe it needs to come later. So to me, I think those are two of the really, really important steps you want to solve. Frame your goals, make sure that you're grounded in what you're trying to achieve, and then find the technology that best fits those goals. Frankly, two of the best steps to start when you want to adopt AI.
Well, I love it. And you're preaching to our typical audience that watches this podcast. And the world that we come from, especially on the audit side, is you start with your purpose and your objective, exactly. Right? And it's easy to kind of just get yourself immersed in all the energy that surrounds AI and just want to adopt it in some way. But if you don't know what you're trying to get out of it, that definitely isn't the best place to start. And I couldn't help but smile when you started sharing that, because I'm not only on the finance, accounting, leadership side, but I'm also the leader of an organization. Yes. So the whole, and I think this started happening a year ago, boards were pushing execs to apply AI in some way. I took that directive and I apply it to my exec team. And, rather than just saying, hey, find a way to use AI in some way, it should start from, well, what are we looking to do with it?
Yeah.
R&D team, are you trying to be 50% more productive or get better quality code? And on the finance team, are you using it to increase productivity with the team, maybe speed up a close? So starting with those questions and doing a top-down approach, I think is a perfect answer to the question, Jason, especially for this audience. I'm glad you shared that. And so, like, for the CFO specifically, do you have assuming they've established their goals, and again, the goals could be, I want to close the books faster. AI may be able to help me do that. Maybe it can help me write policies or get better compliance because of better documentation around it. So whatever your goals may be, like for CFO specifically, that don't know where to start, how would you, maybe in like finance leadership specific ways, like how would you recommend CFOs get going with their AI journeys?
Yeah. So let's assume that we've determined that, hey, AI can be a really valuable tool for us. I do think there's a couple of other foundational things that people need to make sure that they've addressed. One is governance. And it is amazing to me. We actually did another webinar recently. We had about 370 attendees, and we asked the question around how many people feel like they have appropriate AI governance, policies, communication, training, methodology of evaluating and selecting technology. And I was shocked that of the 370 plus participants, the response showed that 13% of them felt like their organization, that's 1/3 of the organization, felt like they had the appropriate governance. It is super important that you establish appropriate governance around AI, because this is the fastest adopted technology ever. And it's creeping into people's organizations where you plan to adopt or not. So I think one of the things about the plan to adopt AI is you should assume that your organization is probably adopting AI, whether you're deliberately addressing it or not, and thus the importance of governance. The other thing that I think it's important is, which is once again foundational, is just figure out, are there any major legal repercussions or regulatory requirements that you need to be aware of as you adopt AI? Are you in a very regulated industries? Many of our clients are biotechs. Well, there's a lot of confidential information. There's probably HIPAA requirements. Okay, well then be aware of those. And that may impact significantly where you do and do not adopt AI. If you're a public company and you're going to adopt these into your finance and accounting processes natively into the process, SOX compliance is a really important consideration. So those are two kind of foundational things. Now, when you move past those foundational things, then the other questions have become is, do you actually have a tech stack that can actually accommodate AI? We're very fortunate here in Silicon Valley, and many of our clients are tech and growth companies. So they tend to be cloud native. They tend to have very dynamic applications, and therefore very easy for these technologies to connect and expand. They typically have data warehouse infrastructure, allowing them to get access data or orchestrate data. So it's very easy for them to bring in a piece of technology like AI, and there are many finance and accounting AI tools, which we can chat about if you would like. It's very easy for them to bring them into the environment. But if you're frankly, a more old school tech setup, if you have more on-premise, if your landscape is much more, let's say, uncoordinated, you have multiple ERPs scattered around the globe, some of the older technologies, not with the same kind of API connections and the like, you may have to ask yourself, do I need to do some foundation building first? Because just bringing a piece of AI in that can't connect to your existing landscape means you just added another layer of complexity. You may solve one thing and create a whole series of other problems. And then the last thing we just mentioned is just data. This is a bit of a longer term thing, but data AI, it's very good at converting unstructured data into structured data, and therefore it's able to do things like other technologies couldn't, such as read contracts or documents really, really well. But you need that data to be accessible. And then you want other piece of data that you might be wanting to use in your process. So I think to get the long-term full value of AI, you should probably be looking at your data infrastructure. How organize it? Do I have 17 different databases storing pieces of my technology? Do I capture all the data in my financial system so that I can compare that information to maybe a contract or a custom order? If you don't have good data infrastructure, what you'll probably find the same thing is you're going to buy a piece of technology, it's going to be disconnected from your environment and doesn't really work very well because you can't get at the information that it needs. So those are some of the key considerations we encourage people to think about.
Well, I'd love to touch on all 3 points, particularly the latter two. And I always, and this is me reverting to my accounting tendencies, would love to, on the first part, you mentioned foundational pieces that are required are just understanding governance and the impact to governance. And then secondly, the regulatory environment. So for that first, to get that first foundation, those first 2 foundational pieces checked, is that just a conversation between like CFOs and partnering with legal teams? Have you found that like external resources are needed for CFOs to get comfortable that they understand both components well?
It's a great question, and it's a really tricky one, because if you were to go search for true governance frameworks right now, there's very little that's official. I'm happy to say that actually we're collaborating with 3 universities to actually build one of the first generative AI governance frameworks, which is going to be exciting, and hopefully we'll get to publish in the next couple of months. And it'll give a really robust framework because there's a lot to think about. I think people typically think about access and data security, which are important considerations, but there's also people training. There's also there's in some respects the environmental, social, and governance component of that. Of what does this do to your people? What does it do to people in your community? How do I have to train people? So there's a lot of considerations that creep into that. So there are some resources out there. I've seen various universities publish some stuff, but they tend to be kind of broad. To me, I think it's a bit of a combination right now. You probably want to be leveraging your networks. If you're in the CFO seat, you certainly want to be collaborating with your internal legal and CEO to come up with let's come up with a company-wide approach to artificial intelligence, not just department. Reach out to your external resources to see what they're seeing out there. Be aware of where you're at. I mean, you got your external legal counsel. I mean, the EU just passed an AI legislation. Make sure that you don't, go, I guess, too far afield of that. But the reality is a bit of a tricky one. I think internal audit actually should be a big player. I've been encouraging some of my internal audit contacts is get ahead of this. Don't wait. Right? You need to be not only putting these in place, but really quickly figure out where has AI already penetrated the organization without you necessarily being aware.
Yeah, Jason, interesting. And I don't know if we talked about this in our past meetings, but I came from a SOX internal audit background, and I'm really bullish on the technology. But when I try to start thinking about like how my risk management and risk assessments change with the adoption of AI, it sounds like it could be an overwhelming exercise for those teams. So I think a theme I keep hearing about as it relates to being able to deploy AI is just having to partner with resources that, because on your day-to-day job, if you're, an accounting manager, like I've been in the past, I'm closing books every month or special projects. It's a lot of work to try to understand this new world of governance that you should take into account to improve your operations. So I think partnering with external resources, and I think even the latter 2 points that you shared, like making sure that the tech stack and the infrastructure supports what you're trying to do with AI. You talked about data, cleansing and data structuring to make sure that you have the right data to activate AI. There's a lot of pieces that require support, I think, from experts beyond like probably the resources that people have in-house to get really going. And, I know firms like yours at the Connor Group, I know support companies and doing that, but I mean, is that really the right way of thinking about it, right? So if you're looking to do something meaningful, you've established a really important goal and objective. AI can help me do this. It sounds like there's a good investment needed on external resources to really get going. Is that a fair statement there, or there are other ways to maybe, do something in a different way to get AI going in their orgs?
Yeah, not to be too self-serving. I mean, certainly the external resources is a great idea. I do think that, especially in the short term, given how new this technology is, how rapidly it's evolving, and in all honesty, how limited the experience is within most organizations, leveraging external capabilities will be very, very important so that you actually have access to the experience and the understanding. That being said, I'm a big proponent that organizations, especially when it comes down to major risks and major strategic areas, ultimately need to be owning them themselves. So I think in the short term, you absolutely want to be, one, start training your team now, but in the short term, you're probably going to need to be leveraging some external expertise, and Connor Group could be one of those resources. But also establish a plan to develop and train your people, because I think the biggest mistake I'm expecting a lot of people are making is, well, we're not really adopting AI right now, so it's not a serious consideration. And I keep reminding people you may not be planning to adopt AI. AI is adopting itself in your organization because it's just so accessible. There is nothing stopping from somebody in sales or marketing or HR just creating an account with ChatGPT and using it, or Bing Enterprise, or whatever it might be. There's AI being deployed in so many of the products that already exist in your landscape, which you may not be comfortable using. So just this kind of broad-based, hey, because we're not doing AI, we don't have to worry about it. Even if you're not planning to officially adopt AI for a little while, you need to figure these things out because they are happening whether you like them or not.
That is absolutely true. And that is a stark difference from what I consider as the last big technological change in accounting, which was the conversion from on-prem to cloud, right? When in that phase, you couldn't be a senior accountant and purchase your own and implement your own SaaS solution. You needed a team. And so you kind of got forced into putting a plan together with a broader group of people. But the type of AI technology that's available today, I can go in and get a free trial and, without a plan, a department-wide plan to pull everything together. It can be problematic without any kind of, strategy around that.
Yeah, I mean, some simple innocuous examples. I'm just going to get an AI tool to help me prepare my slides because it just does a great job. And there's some amazing AI tools. And what you have to do is just have to load your deck in there and it'll make a beautiful slide deck. Now, if that deck includes core financial information about the organization, or people information, or budget information, or product information, and by the way, you haven't checked whether that provider has the appropriate security measures, or in many respects, some of these providers, part of the terms and conditions is they can use your data. You just open up an innocuous, hey, it seems right, fine, but just a PowerPoint deck. But I actually have now shared private information about my company or about my people with a third party without actually really thinking it through.
And as a function, that is really one of our core objectives, is to ensure compliance in many different ways in our business. I think those points are very, very important. And I think as exciting as AI can be, we got to be responsible for making sure that we understand how the data is going to be used and what what we're opening up in terms of potential risk by adopting AI. So I'm glad like we're spending some time in this podcast talking about it. I think it's important to the audience. But I do want to balance this out as we wrap up the conversation and just kind of talk about some of the fun and exciting things that you're seeing and along the lines of AI. So, Jason, if I had to ask you for one prediction of a new advancement related to AI in the coming year, like what do you see in the crystal ball this year for finance teams and AI?
If you don't mind, I'm going to run two very quickly. One is I think we will see a lot of new AI technologies roll up very quickly that are addressing many of the use cases. I think that within the next 12 months, we're going to see a lots of new capabilities come out as people are figuring out this technology and finding its application. But if I cast my mind a little further out, I think what's really exciting to me is I think we are going to change the relationship that we have with technology and how we interact with technology. This chat-oriented interface that people who've used ChatGPT or Google Gemini are experiencing right now, I think that is actually going to be the method by which we start moving towards. Now, it may evolve a little bit, may not always be typed, maybe one where you actually speak or a combination thereof. But effectively, it's a concept of having a real assistant with you, whereby all you have to do is give it normal language instructions, right? You can just talk to it. You can just type your instructions and you're able to get or achieve or do or process whatever action that you're looking for, whether it's I want information, to I want to drive an action, to I want to gather data points from multiple places, to I want to investigate something. I really believe that this form of chat interface is going to be the way we interact with technology on a go-forward basis, and not just in terms of interacting, in terms of gathering information or processing transactions. Longer term, maybe even in terms of how we set up systems and manage systems and monitor systems and test controls and validate compliance. That methodology, I think technology is going to become a true assistant for us, where we just engage with this technology in a very normal fashion, like we would to another human being on our team, and it'll perform a lot of their tasks. Now, it's some time away from achieving that. Whether we achieve that in the next 12 months fully, I'd be surprised, but I think we're going to start seeing steps in this direction. I think we're already seeing some of them. But I really envision that's going to be something where we land in the next few years. And that's going to be amazing. If you think about it now, I don't need to be an expert in NetSuite to get the full value of the technology, right? I don't need to be an expert in it's Gabify to be able to set up the product. I don't need to be an expert in Salesforce and NetSuite to be able to connect the dots. I don't even need to know where the data is. I can just go into a system and I can just ask it because it's connected to many of my systems. So I can ask it a question about a customer and it will go gather certain pieces from Salesforce. It can gather certain information from the fulfillment system, gather certain information from our billing system, and give me a robust answer without me having to figure out where the dots are and how to connect them. So to me, I think that's a really exciting future we will see with the AI stuff. Full kind of powerful assistant is probably a few years away, but I do believe that that's coming, and I think it's going to be a real major change with how we interact with technology. It'll make technology much more accessible, which is actually it'll be a lot of fun for everybody. So,
I agree. The whole concept of the powerful assistant, I think, is in the near future. And as I think about my own kind of personal interactions with ChatGPT and Gemini in the last year alone. So I remember when I first started using it last December, it was more along the lines of like create an itinerary for a trip, or write me a policy. But Jason, I got to tell you, the interactions that I have with it today, it's more conversational. Like, that doesn't look right. Like, can you update that and edit this pieces in? So even my interactions within ChatGPT has evolved already, and to think that these assistants can have access to systems and be able to ask it to do things that I'm not an expert in, to your point, I think it's just going to equip accounting teams specifically with more power. And it's exciting to think about, and I can't help but think about how that's going to help on the audit side, and perhaps beyond an internal audit function, senior accountants and accounting managers can just really ask these personal assistants to audit for them before it gets into audit. I mean, the possibilities are just so immense, and it's fun to think about. And I know I can get very excited about this topic and probably drag this conversation on for another hour, but that might be a good cliffhanger to invite you back for another episode, Jason, and maybe drill down into some of those specific disciplines within accounting and to think about all the cool things that AI might be able to help with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of really exciting stuff that is either already there or coming in the future. So be happy to jump on again and share some of those experiences. And, it's always fun to see what people are learning out there. What I keep telling people, if there's no functions right now that are helpful for you, just give it another 2-3 months. It'll be there. This thing is moving so quickly. It's quite amazing.
I agree with that 100%. Lots of fun to come and exciting updates. And Jason, I appreciate you taking the time today to join the podcast and look forward to having you back soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys having me.
Thanks for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want more information, please check us out at gapify.com, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.